Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Welcome to another scene for the living world of darkness, a ridge across New York, wherein we have the elusive 10 Point. She's not very elusive. She's actually pretty easy to find. She only goes so many places, but whatever. The elusive 10 Point is probably headed towards the Forge. Probably, in fact, coming up on the Forge, sending a just a light, inquisitive sort of pulse towards Dallas in the pack link to kind of Marco Polo and see if she is in fact present.
Well, as it happens, Dallas actually is closed off from the pack link at the moment, so she's concentrating.
Very well. The Marco Polo pulse rebounds. No love. Very well. In that case, yeah, she might notice. She actually might just completely tune it out. There is a mild jingling in warning of 10 Points approach, as is always the case. But she will let herself into the forge quietly, trying not to let's face it, if Dallas is closed off, the last thing she needs to do is be obtrusive. So yeah, she'll just slip herself in and kind of take a glance around and see if she's made a good guess.
Well, when 10 Point hops along on in there, um, Dallas is sitting at the grindstone currently, working over some blades from the Sep's armory. Just kind of going through them, making sure they're nice and sharp. Every now and then she'll pull it away from the stone itself and let it kind of slow down as she gets up and walks over to the wet stone and just kind of gives it a nice polish. And then gets back to it as she goes from one sword to the next.
And yeah, 10 Point will ease her way over. We'll make a point of coming around to where she's at least in reasonable peripheral view, so that she cannot be accused of being sneaky. And seeing as it's just a slow walk, it's not like she's jingling up a storm or anything distracting like that. But yeah, she'll ease around and probably eventually, depending on whether or not she's acknowledged on the offset, may well just take a seat offside.
As 10 Point kind of makes her way in there, Dallas will sit down and turn herself slightly towards 10 Point. Look at her with a city, and then pick up the blade and walk over to the whetstone again, and begin to do that lovely sounding grinding.
So I looked over at her with a what?
A mildly curious look.
Oh yeah. So at the initial glance, at least, 10 Point will do the polite backward tip of head, but doesn't seem like she's in any serious hurry to talk about anything, so she's not going to interrupt. And yeah, she goes back to the grindstone, making those just lovely, totally not like grating, horrible noises. Yeah. And considering, oh, there you go. Sorry.
What can I do for you, 10 Point?
I just wanted to thank you, Raya.
Brow will go up. For what exactly?
For investing the time in me yesterday, even after training.
Well, there's no reason not to, really. You you hadn't been trained in a while. You seemed like you were in need of it, and was more than happy to oblige. So she'll just kind of shrug.
And at some point, it's just kind of awkwardly folded her hands in her lap because she's not sure what else to do with them, really. And for after Raya. I appreciate the care.
Huh. Well, that's what any good packmate would have done.
Faint smile appears. All the same, it means a great deal to me. And I am sorry that I left so hastily.
You needn't have been together for longer than I have with either of you, so I get it.
And she presses her lips together a bit. Just kind of that stiff little thinking line for a moment. I know that he acts like nothing touches him, Raya, but it's not true. And he needed to care even more than I did. But I do not want you to think that it means that I appreciate what you were doing any less, or that I would not do the same for you.
Well, pretty easy to see if you know him that he's not okay.
And she gives a kind of light little nod, just idly agreeing.
But what can you do? He will continue to push people away as much as he can, continuously being just who he is. Can't help it. Well, eventually, someone's going to take serious offense to him.
I don't think he knows how to not push people once they get close. I'm sorry that you are still in that place where you get close and he pushes. It can be gotten past. I know he says things that cut deeply. But should you need someone to understand just as he does, I'm here, Raya.
Well, I really don't know what to say to that 10 point. I don't have a problem with lashing out at people outside of a physical type of violence. I don't try and demoralize people. And I don't really hide away from the emotions that I feel. I think you come to see that.
You don't. But when one is wounded, even if it is as simple as being stuck away here, it means something to have those close to you appreciate that you are wounded and to come to tend to you. And I know that Aiden is very deeply wounded himself. And so he does not he doesn't respond to it the way he should. But I know that you are hurting too.
Robot there. What'd you say?
Oh, sorry. She said, I know that you are hurting too. No, darn it. I killed him.
Try that.
You seem to be a little laggy. I see your thingy is kind of jittering. Basically, she just said that, Aiden's hurting, so he's so distracted by his own hurt that he's not responding, but I know you're hurting too.
And what do I have to be hurting about 10 point?
You have the unique misfortune of having someone that you care for, that cares for you, and not being able to go to her. And I'm sorry that you're stuck here.
Yep, just here doing my duty. Perceptive is very appreciative. Is very appreciative. Or peers that are very appreciative.
And again, her lips kind of firm into a line. And she's just kind of got her eyes resting down on her hands.
Dallas proceeds to start sort of sharpening the edge of the blade again.
Whatever the rest of the sept may say, and however the rest of the sept may act, it is still of note that we are the ones who most readily set aside our own needs in favor of the sept. Raya will make sure it does not go unnoticed. And she will take up a thoughtful look for a short bit, because I imagine that as the days have been going on since wartime has been called, Dallas has just kind of been getting more and more tense.
Mm-hmm. A little bit more absorbed in her work, definitely.
A thought, Raya, in regards to what you are missing.
Dallas will stop for a minute.
I know that you cannot properly leave, and she cannot properly come here, Raya, but there are places at the edge of the bond, places where normal people come and go freely. Places where you could probably arrange at least to see your friend. And if you worry for backlash, simply arrange such a thing for when many people come and go. And if you wish, I will speak to the pigeons, and I will have them create a cloud around you so that you can have some privacy and need not worry about spiritual intervention.
Well, one is assuming that afraid of what other people think. Everyone pretty much knows who I'm fucking.
No. I'd simply imagined, Raya, that you might like privacy. You might like a chance to talk without others taking undue interest and interrupting. If you care for this person, there is no reason to feel ashamed for it. Unless she is
Really?
worm-tainted or a threat to the sept, Raya.
Are you sure about that point? Pick up the sword and do a couple more test cuts in with it in the air. Because the last time you were around any of the fair folk, I seem to remember you being extremely uneasy.
Extremely what?
Uneasy.
And there's no denial on her face. In fact, if anything, she just kind of, again, does that little press of her lips into a line. My discomfort does not play a part in what you wish to do.
She'll look over at 10 Point.
And 10 Point is still like pretty wide open. If should Dallas at any point put down her walls, she can kind of, it's really easy to get a sense of surface thought, emotion, etc. There's definitely no hiding going on.
Dallas will take a look at her, and we'll let the walls come down for a bit.
And yeah, 10 Point is like I said, she doesn't really like project stuff out to the point where it really invades far, but reading the surface emotions of generally, like, yes, there's still like that little tinge of I don't even want to call it discomfort. It's more like just a kind of cautiousness, but it's there. But at the same time, there's a goodly amount of a sort of sympathy, an attempted empathy. But it's easy enough to read that, like, sure, this kind of it pokes her in a way that kind of sets her hairs up, but at the same time, it's very much a personal discomfort and not some sort of hatred or overall dislike. It's just kind of an established generalized mistrust.
Dallas takes a breath in, and she'll pull the whetstone off and set it to one side, and she'll walk over to the anvil.
Raya. You have let her close to you, and you have decided to trust her, and she has done you no harm. Regardless of what tales I have heard, regardless of what legends I have been taught, what is important in this case is that she makes you happy. And without her stuck here, you are unhappy. If having a chance to see her, even briefly, even in a public place, means that you will be happier, then I will help you do it.
Dallas lets a small smile creep onto her face, and then she will just kind of look over, kind of wave 10 Point over.
And she's obediently hops up and goes ahead and carries herself closer to whatever point she has gestured or indicated to come to.
Dallas kind of gestures her over enough to put an arm on her shoulder, and then kind of rubs the top of her head slightly. And then she steps over onto the other side of the anvil. And then looks over at 10 Point. Do you mind doing me a favor?
Of course, Ryan.
Could you put your hand down on that anvil?
Then she doesn't hesitate. There's an inquisitive sort of tone that rises to the top of her mind, and she just picks up her arm, sets her hand on the anvil, just kind of plants it there, palm down.
10 Point, talking like this, one-on-one, you get a good sense of who you are. And Dallas will take a look at the sword, sort of check its straightness, looking down the flat of the blade, and then she'll step so she's perpendicular to the anvil.
I assume she's like moving the arm from around 10 Point to leave her standing there with her hand on it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I want to know where, when it's just you and Aiden. And she'll sort of give a quick flourish with the sword, wrist over wrist. And then she holds it out over the anvil.
I missed part of that. Something about when it's just her and Aiden. I feel like I missed a kind of important word or two.
How she is when she's wondering how it is when it's just her and Aiden and how it differs. And then she, takes the sword and holds it over the anvil itself.
And 10 Point shows no sign of removing her hand. And she's just kind of... For once she's actually studying Dallas's face, she still never makes over direct eye contact unless it's sought out, but she's just very carefully measuring expression, measuring posture, because unless Dallas is being open enough to allow the reading of kind of surface demeanor, that's all she has to go on.
Mm-hmm. Dallas then sort of sets the blade on top of 10 Point's wrist.
I'm assuming edge down?
Edge down. It's not enough to cut anything, but that feeling of a super sharp blade?
Oh, yeah.
When it's just resting there and it's like, man, all I have to do is go a little bit to the left or a little bit to the right with a little bit of pressure.
Pretty sure if I breathe too hard, this is going to cut me, yeah.
Yeah. If Aiden gave out about you assisting me in seeing Karina, if he had serious problems with it, and he came to you for information, for what went on, for what you were planning on doing, or what I was planning on doing, or if he came to you and said that he didn't like it enough and he was worried about my well-being, he wanted you to stop it, what would you do then? Dallas will apply just the slightest amount of pressure just to bite into the skin with the blade.
We talking paper cut, or are we talking actually a decent cut? Take damage level of cutting?
Not quite to one point of lethal yet, but, it wouldn't take much to get there.
Yep. Nope. If anything, like she's got the fingers splayed as she's pressed her palm. And while the cutting will provoke a certain amount of tension, almost like she's trying to grip the flat surface, she very stubbornly keeps her hand there, still looking to Dallas. And she'll feel like a various flurry of emotions as she's suggesting this or that.
I know that Aiden Raya means a great deal to you. I know I'm the new member of this pack. But the month that I've been here, I have begun to notice certain patterns of behavior with Aiden. I understand that his mind is not in the greatest of places. But I do know that because he knows that I won't do anything directly to him when it comes in terms of Darcy, but I am a very easy target for him. And he's easily motivated into making my life difficult as possible when it comes to. And she's going to kind of push forward on the blade so that it bites down for about 2 points of lethal.
And I am going to go in here and put in a little setup.
We didn't set it up beforehand.
I didn't because I wasn't sure what was going to happen.
The scandal.
I know, right? And I'm going to just determine right here and now what I'm naming the scene. Yeah. Let me think for a second, because technically the scene yesterday should have yielded willpower, but
Y'all spent a hell of a lot of willpower.
I spent myself down to 1. But like, I'm pondering whether I should take any, because honestly, in the wake of it, she was just so fucking beat up and drained. No, I'll give you the unique experience of willpower 110 point. And that is a fail. So yeah, she does not gracefully take the pain of being cut. She doesn't move the hand, but she does kind of writhe with the effort of keeping it planted, and probably ends up bringing her other hand up and biting on it harshly in an attempt to stifle the pain noises that come as she gets, it's a very quick and very smooth gesture to impart that lethal, but it's still decidedly painful as she starts bleeding onto the anvil. And the irony is that while there is a tinge of fear there, because let's face it, lethal is a lot more dangerous to her than getting beaten around. Dallas will find that of all the strange things, she does not resort to any kind of stark terror. She's not scared for her life. She's not even especially afraid of being hurt unduly, which is strange when you're already being cut on. But compared to some of the imbalanced people that 10 Point has been confronted with in her life, and the unpredictable people she's been confronted with when it comes to abusers, Dallas is not one of the ones that imparts a lot of stark terror on her.
I mean, I could activate a gift if you
You
want.
you could. I'm trying to basically say that it's fairly clear that there is some level of trust there to the
Mm-hmm.
point that it doesn't just send her off the deep end.
Fair enough.
So she kind of crumples a bit, like she grips and she keeps the hand in place because dear God, it'll get worse if it moves. But she kind of does that thing where you almost duck or shrink a bit briefly, like the
Mm-hmm.
knees bend, they give a little, and she'll manage to stammer her way back up. But she just kind of turns that pained gaze on Dallas. It's very open. It's almost painfully open.
Dallas's eyes are right there on 10 point.
Raya, I have been taught to obey Aiden, and I do. But it does not mean that I do not have opinions of my own, and that I do not try to show him the truth when he can't see it.
Not really the question I asked 10 point. And she'll lean onto the sword. And it takes 5 points of lethal to remove a limb, right?
Um, I want to say yes.
So she's going to bite in with the blade to about,
I'd say by like 3, you're probably hitting bone.
yeah, she's going to go down to that third level as she leans onto the blade.
And I'm going to more fairly roll this time and respond accordingly. Yeah, she doesn't. She does not do well. She presses to the point where it, like, you can feel that, just that satisfying little thud as the blade hits bone. And that's about where 10 point finally crumples properly. Like, she's not going to be able to have the force of will to keep her hand there. She probably yanks it back, gets a little, just extends the cut some in the process. It shouldn't bite through bone from it, but
If Dallas can grab a hold of that hand beforehand.
yes, she totally can. She can. I mean, she has an open window into 10 points mind. She's going to sense the urge to pull back
Yeah.
as soon as it presents itself. So she can clamp a hand down on it, on her
Mm-hmm.
wrist or whatever, and 10 point damn near hits the floor, probably held up mostly by the giant hand pinning her arm to the anvil.
Not really giant. I think Dallas's hands are nice and dainty.
Nice and dainty. Well, she's blacksmithing?
Yeah,
Still,
just a little
very
rough.
strong. Very, very strong grip pins her arm to the anvil. And short of that, 10 point essentially kind of collapses and finally has just tears streaming freely down her face and continues to bleed pretty pretty egregiously, I imagine, onto the anvil.
If he ordered you to sabotage what I have, what I'm building, what I've. And there's just this moment in the pack link where, just between the two of them, Dallas allows that full openness
Mm-hmm.
to the pack link. And then suddenly what Dallas feels for Karina is just laid there. And it goes way beyond just a relationship at this point. Because Dallas had a revelation not too long ago.
So it's definitely a deeper, more full emotion than that.
It's bordering on the lines of something very profound to say to another person. And yeah, Dallas just lets that bleed through the gravity of it as she wrenches her wrist down slightly to inflict that 4th level of lethal.
So at that point, I imagine there's like some
Or
bone.
yeah,
Yep.
it's bitten into the bone a bit. Some effort has to be put into it, and she actually has to lean into it. But she'll say as she does it, "If he ordered you to destroy that, to hamper it in some way, what would you do?"
And admittedly, let's face it. So she gets hit by that wave of very deep emotion, and she's already crying. So the best she can manage to make it really worse is like there's just an initial kind of hiccup, and then there's that force laid into the blade on her arm as her hand is damn near severed. And let's see if she can even talk right now. Nope, she really can't. That's like she can hear it, and Dallas can probably feel her mind kind of doing that rat in a cage thing, scratching and desperately running around. But she just is overwhelmed by the pain of having her hand damn near cut off. So yeah, she's probably writhing, and let's face it, she's probably screaming, especially as it gets through bone.
And Dallas, seeing this, she'll pull the blade out of the bone, out of the flesh, and she's going to raise it up over her head, and she'll kind of look down at 10 Point, deadlocked into her eyes. "So what is it, 10 Point? What's the honest answer? What's the good word?"
Let's see. All things considered, I mean, she hasn't botched.
And the blade's actually out of
Definitely
the wound.
helps. No, she's still not doing so hot. Like you can essentially get the impression that she's screaming no inside her own head. But there's not a lot of context there. There's only so much presence of mind. As and of course as soon as the blade is removed, the flesh begins very slowly, mind you, to knit. But yeah, she's gasping for breath and rasping and not maybe not screaming anymore, but definitely crying. And just kind of trying to find her faculties at the moment. I mean, and Dallas will. I mean, willpower 1 isn't a thing in play, but she can tell that 10 Point's like pretty frayed.
Mm-hmm.
It's not evasive. She just doesn't have the force of will. She doesn't have the what's the word I'm always using? She doesn't have the resolve. So yeah, she can kind of feel her mentally fraying down to that, like, you know, that rope frayed down to a couple threads kind of thing.
Dallas looks down at her and finally lets go of the hand. If 10 Point were resolved, trying to throw up any kind of wall or anything like that, Dallas might have persisted on, but seeing that 10 points defeated, basically. That there's no, it's, from what I could gather, nothing that she would sense out of 10 point that would make it seem as though 10 point were trying to hold anything back from her.
There's definitely no resistance.
She takes her hand over the blade and sort of rubs it along the flat of the blade.
And naturally, as soon as she's let go, 10 point, collapses to the floor, gripping the arm to her chest, tightly wrapping her hand around the cut to try to stem the flow of blood.
Dallas will grab a stool, and from her belt, she'll procure a few of the tools that she uses. She'll reach over and grab a hold of 10 Point's bleeding arm, and she will hold it over top the blade and let 10 Point bleed over it.
Then yeah, there's some attempts, just that mindless attempt to keep it close to her body to clutch it. But Dallas has the greater strength of the two of them, so she'll be able to kind of wrench it free and hold it out, whether or not 10 Point really wants it that way. And it's still it's eerie that she visibly knits even in Hamid, but she will still be bleeding. It's a lot of lethal to heal up.
Mm-hmm. And Dallas begins to etch with her little, their fine chiseling tools. She goes along that the fuller of the blade itself, just etching in a few glyphs, a bit of the Garu tongue into the blade. The I belong to the honest warrior, something to that effect. And with the blood sort of driven into the actual indentations made into the fuller itself, looks up at 10 Point.
And I imagine by the time she's done, most of it, if not all of it, has healed. Because outside of combat, lethal heals fairly quickly.
Mm-hmm. Well, for you at least.
Yep. So yeah, she'll be getting her faculties back. She still hasn't even she doesn't even have a sheer curtain in the mine or in the pack link. It's all still very much bared to the eye. Raya, if he asked me to do the kind of things that you think he would, I would beg him not to. Knowing what I know.
Which is why I believe you. You saying that. Which is why you should hang on to this. And she'll offer the hilt out to 10 Point with her fingers wrapped around the blade.
There is just a flat moment of stunned silence as she looks at the hilt, and it really does take her a second to grasp that this is earnestly a thing. And she'll if Dallas is still reading the top of her head, there's definitely the knee-jerk reaction, not in disbelieving Dallas, but in generally just kind of responding to most seemingly positive things as a trap. And but after a stark couple moments of silence, she kind of numbly reaches up and accepts the hilt, almost as if she doesn't really know what she's supposed to do with it once she has it.
And with her eyes locked on 10 points, Dallas will drag her fingers across the edges of the blade, um, inflicting about 3 lethal onto her hands.
Oh, Jesus.
And she will stand up, and she will walk over to 10 point. And actually, before I do that, I want to see. I want to see. Well, Dallas keeps that composure.
No, real good.
Real damn good. Yeah.
And yeah, 10 point is probably still kind of on the ground. She's probably just pushed herself up into something of a sit. So she's got like the one hand planted on the floor and the one hand on the hilt of the weapon. And she's still kind of huddled in that defensive little posture, but yeah, she's still on the floor. And watching and listening. But yeah, there she is.
Dallas will walk over to her, reach down and grab sort of the collar of her shirt, or like the strap of her dress, whatever she's wearing. And she will she won't jerk 10 point, but she'll pull on it to get 10 point up to her feet.
Yep. The pressure and the intention are pretty obvious guidance. She'll kind of hurriedly follow the pull and get herself up to her feet again.
Dallas's expression softens a bit as she palm bloody fingers and just puts them against 10 point's forehead and face and just drags it down all the way down the front of that dress.
Yeah, and considering that she normally wears kind of worn muted colors, it'll definitely it definitely stains. I know the picture has her in like a black dress, but usually it's layers of like just kind of pale washed out colors. And yeah, she just kind of stunned by the gesture. She's accustomed to a number of things, but these are more brutal than what she's used to. At least more physically brutal than what she's used to. So she's still kind of reeling a bit.
And once that's done, Dallas walks over, grabs her water bottle, and sort of pours it over her hands. And takes the time to. You can regenerate in Hamid still. You
It's
just have
harder.
to actively. Yeah, you just have to actively
Actually,
do it.
can you?
I think you can.
I don't think you can regenerate and breed. 10 Point's the only one who can regenerate in every form.
Well, either way, just gonna stay in Hamid for the rest of the scene.
Okay.
She'll heal it later.
I mean, if nothing else, 10 Point will end up offering things to wrap her hand with just so it doesn't continue bleeding egregiously everywhere.
Dallas will allow this.
Yeah, in the wake of it, like it's kind of a comically numb gesture, and it's practically an autopilot. But especially as she rinses her hand off, 10 Point will produce, probably out of her swag, some sort of bandaging. And assuming Dallas lets her do it, we'll kind of gravitate to the hand and tightly wrap it to put pressure on it.
Yet believe in pain and sacrifice. And Aget offers her blood out as chiminage to another. There's a level of trust there. Several months ago, I told you that you may never have my trust again. I'm glad that I was wrong about that.
And well, still very shaken, still a little kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Not knock-kneed, but still kind of a little weak-legged. There's a flood of grateful relief there at the surface. And it's not the kind of gesture necessarily that Dallas would probably go for. But 10 Point is not thinking but so clearly. And especially if they're going to be that close to each other and there's all this eye contact and it's more than 10 Point can really think to stay reserved on. She will actually she doesn't do hugs in an aggressive way really, but she definitely has a tendency to kind of nest into a person, and she will do that. She just kind of tucks her head and nests in, and unless Dallas is going to stop her, will kind of gratefully put the arms around her middle, not up around her shoulders, not, yeah.
Dallas will sort of wrap her arms around 10 Point's shoulders. And though she doesn't say it out loud, there is that sensation that someone might have if they were or were able to express that they'd had always wanted a sister, but never got to have one.
No. Yeah, with the prompt of positive emotion, and again, especially if she's getting pulled in and held tightly, the teddy bear mode sort of activates again to the point where it just kind of, instead of being at the surface of her thoughts, she actually floods out just whatever topmost positive emotion she has. So it's incredible relief. It's a surprising amount of just gratefulness and care. And yeah, it's like, here, have an endorphin rush. Just,
And she sort of, she'll pull 10 Point up into her lap and just kind of give her a bit more of a squeeze. You are my Omega, but you are also a sister. And I think you're no longer just a punching bag. When we train, it won't be training meant to inflict pain. It won't be meant to get out frustration. It will be to teach you. As those who took in Dallas Reed of the Yakar bloodline did.
yeah, she'll definitely, among all the flooding, like that, the just overflowing emotion, just under that, just beneath it, she will be able to finally kind of get a clear view and a clear sense of just how much 10 Point literally just, she needs to be wanted and needed. And this is satisfying that to the point that it's kind of provoking the overflow. So she gets a very, very keen insight to that. I guess it's essentially like her, what's the word? Just her motivation for everything she's doing is just constantly to feel as though, or constantly wanting to be wanted. And there's a numb little nod. She's still tightly wrapped up in Dallas and has zero resistance to being pulled into the lap. I can still do my duties as Omega Raya. I want to train. But don't think that I see those as being hurt. It lets me know I'm needed.
Omega just isn't around to be beat on by the pack.
No.
They're there to give the pack what it needs. And Hayden certainly needs you. And I need you too.
She's like a little lamprey. She's so happy and so fucking attached. She only has so much strength in her body, but it's definitely, she can feel it. She's clinging tightly.
And if you feel like you need me, please learn how to use that fucking thing so next time we start swinging blades and hammers. A repeat of yesterday doesn't happen.
It startles a little bit of a weak little laugh out of her. Yes, Raya.
And then Dallas will kind of gently nudge her away as they've been hugging for a bit too long now. Yeah, taking up scene. She'll try to stand up.
Yeah, she will. Even just the initial thought that comes with the nudging, she responds by kind of dislodging and easing out of the lap.
I guess since you're here, I can show you something else too. And she will walk over to an area that's like her cubbyhole, her shelf. And she opens up the cabinet and produces a chest plate and sets it down onto the workbench. And on it is, of course, the symbol of stag, along with sort of in or put on the background of a crescent moon glyph. And sort of the borderline of the actual armor itself, like the fringe, are all antlers that have been painted gold. The armor itself has been colored to like a brownish color, almost as if it were covered in leather, sort of matching the overall tinge of her hair. And it looks like she hasn't put it on yet, but there is a place for a fur line for the collar to be placed in.
Aww.
Fuzz around the collar.
Everybody needs fuzz. And let's face it, 10 Point's in a pretty fragile place, so she probably just starts leaking tears again. Happily.
Alice just kind of rolls her eyes. No tears, Moira. Only dreams.
And I mean, she's smiling, but she kind of belatedly brings a hand up, rubbing at her cheeks.
It's not quite done yet. Still needs needs a little bit more work. So it's not as restrictive. But once it's done.
Thank you, Raya.
You're welcome. Well, she'll kind of look around the forge and kind of spot a scabbard, and will offer it out to 10 Point. Most of the blades in there are uniform because they're general issue.
Mm-hmm.
But she'll hand the scabbard over to 10 Point.
And yeah, she'll kind of look a little torn because generally one cleans a blade before putting it away, and she's not sure whether it's appropriate to wipe the blood off of it first or not.
Oh, no, she would have wiped. Oh, shit, right, because she got her hands all cut up on it. Yeah, Dallas will take the blade from her and will actually kind of throw it into the. Hell, why not? She'll put it into the furnace for a bit to actually burn off the blood, and then she will quench it one last time. And then once it's nice and cooled down, that's when she'll hand it back over.
Yeah, and with it wiped dry, 10 Point will finally go ahead and just shoot it home into the scabbard.
Well,
Thank you again, Raya, for understanding and for being
just
clear with me.
Just don't. Doesn't need to be said.
And she finally kind of goes ahead and presses her lips shut and gives a light nod. Do you want any assistance with the rest of your work, Raya?
Just gotta look around. Not in here. If you want to join me on patrol, that's fine, but in here, it's usually just me. And it's nice to have that.
And she kind of gives a numb little nod again. Then I will leave you to your work, Raya.
She'll nod and she'll pick up the breastplate and put it back in her cubby. And she will grab a pair of tongs and walk over to the furnace and pull out a glowing rod, which is meant to be made into a blade from the sept itself. And she will take the time to go into Glabro as she picks out her crafting hammer, and she begins to work.
And with the easy dismissal of just being turned away from, 10 Point isn't as quick and attentive about it, but she definitely just kind of goes ahead and lets herself out. Still a little dazed, but definitely holding a new weapon. And I think that is probably a good place to end our scene.
Mm.
So thank you, players, for playing. Thank you, watchers, for watching. We'll see you next time on the Living World of Darkness, Rage Across New York.